Hi, fam. Welcome to another edition of I Got a Lot of Things to Say. I'm your host, Kia Dotson, and I have some really exciting news. I have co-hosts now. Yay! And my first co-host is someone that you will recognize. He's been on the show before. It's Geronimo Ronin. He's going to be my co-host, and we're going to be talking about social issue things. And then you'll meet my second co-host later because I have two. Geronimo, welcome to the I Got a Lot of Things to Say family. And I'm so happy that you're a co-host now.
Yes, like hi. It's good to be here. Glad to be back. As always, I have so much to say, so I feel like this is perfect. Like,
Yes,
put me right in there.
yes, exactly. And today we're going to be talking about creatives and the creative process, which is something kind of near and dear to me. And how can creatives create and live in our society? I've been having a hard time. I think I've been creative, I think all of my life. I've wanted to be a writer since I was 8. And I think when I was 12, I decided I wanted to be a reporter. And then I got to high school and I dabbled with being a nun for a bit. I'm Catholic, y'all. And when that and I was like, I don't think I want to be a nun. I really wanted to be a reporter. One of the things that really struck me about writing and reporting was Woodward and Bernstein and the Watergate scandal and meeting sources under the cover of night and getting that scoop and then just writing it and doing it because really felt like this is something that needs to be told and not so much for the accolades. And in and out, I've always done creative things. I started two online literary magazines that actually took submissions. I wrote for those. I was the editor in chief, but I also did some writing for that. I've written a book. I have written poetry. I've written short stories. Within the past 10 years, though, as the ADHD method is, you kind of burn out or you get tired of doing it. So I just kind of stopped. I stopped in the middle of my second book that I was writing. And then I just decided to do a podcast because I feel like I have things to say and now I am better at spoken word than the written word. So I decided to do this. I am trying to make money from it. I do have a Substack where you can subscribe and get the episodes early. I am going to start crowdsourcing because you need things. Everything that I do on this podcast is free. I'm using free software. The podcast studio is free. I have social media management tools that are also free. So everything that I'm doing is free, but I need some upgrades and I'm not working at the moment as much as I want to. I'm not working at the moment. And I feel like people who get started with things like this, whether it's podcast or online magazine, writing a book, it all feels like, especially in this day and age, that in order for you to be successful, you have to know somebody, you have to have a connection. And I'm going to do some thread shout outs to some of my mutuals in this episode. Life According to Keeks, that's the mutual of mine. She's absolutely hilarious. And she posted this a couple of months ago about why a lot of content creators, social media people tend to go to the right as opposed to the left in regards to social issues, political punditry. And it's because there's money there. There's money on the right. Candace Owens wasn't always this Candace Owens. Like Candace Owens used to be a left wing pundit and she couldn't really make it there, so she moved to the right. It's easier to be a nobody and get in on the right and become someone than it is on the left. The left likes to gatekeep a lot, I feel like. There's a lot of gatekeeping going on. And you wonder why you have all these people that tend to move to the right. when before they had all of the ideology, the messaging, the words, all the trappings and the accoutrements of what you think a left wing person was. Look at Russell Brand. Russell Brand, when he was an actor, he seemed to have been left leaning. And now all of a sudden, I need money. I need a dollar, dollar. So he went to the right, and now he's this right wing media darling. Joe Rogan. I don't know if Joe Rogan was ever left, but he seems to move more left and more right. And the more right he moves, the more money he gets.
Yeah.
And now you have us, you have certain content creators. You had a lot of content creators at the DNC convention last week, and those people aren't really making, I feel, at least it doesn't look like to me, the money or getting the support as certain people on the right get.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I also think there's certain other social aspects of that. I think as far as who gets the support on the left, there is some, I feel like, pretty privilege involved in that, what I noticed, or like people who are more traditionally looking, they would be considered traditionally attractive. Like if you
Okay.
look a specific way, I noticed those people tend to get a little bit more support because of the aesthetic of how they look, how they're presenting, and everything like that. You could say the exact same message that they're saying, and you could probably say it better than they can, but yet because they're the ones saying it, and people are already appealed to them by how they look sometimes, I feel like that plays a part, basically, especially when you talk about gatekeeping, the aspect of gatekeeping in such a way. And some of the content creators I've also noticed are very cliquey, which I've picked up on very quickly. There's certain content creators who only mess with each other and they kick it with each other. I've seen pictures and videos of them all in the same room kicking it with each other. And I'm not talking about at events. I'm talking about like they're out to brunch with each other. They're at each other's houses and things like that. And I'm just kind of like, that's interesting. Whether or not they were friends or not before they started getting any like notoriety, that can be investigated. But I do think that it does bring up the question of like whose messaging is worth listening to, who decides that, and why that decision is made. And I definitely have started looking at things a little bit, a little bit more analytically and critically, because it's just like some of y'all, are where you are, and not necessarily because other people aren't saying what you're saying. It's the way that it's who you know, it's who you're connected with, and those doors are being particularly open to you. And this is not to discount any of those people who actually work hard at it, because I know that a lot of them do work hard at it. But it's just like, let's also acknowledge that there's certain leg ups that you have and certain advantages that you have to people who may be starting from the ground up.
Yes.
And it does make it very difficult to break through when now the people who have broken through are now picking and choosing and deciding who they want to invest in, whose messaging is worth their time. Especially like in so many things, factors come into play. Whether or not you align with how they view things or their politics, whether you align with like, their outlook on how business should work. There's so many different elements to that. And if it doesn't necessarily run parallel with what they're trying to do, that can trip you up as well. So I've noticed that quite a bit. And, as somebody who, loves to create and as somebody who like, me, I like to write, like I compose music and, and a lot of it is like, I like to do things that people can, get something from and believe that I have a story to tell. And it's just, when you see those things, you notice it can be a bit disheartening, and you can burn out quick when you don't have the tools or the resources or a machine behind you. So it's like, you got something pushing, and then of course, there's obviously the brand deals and things like that come with, content creation in this era.
And for you, started creating on TikTok. Well, that's where I found you. I found you on TikTok, and you're a content creator. You are a lot closer. I mean, you have been doing this a lot longer than I have. I kind of shied away from creating content on social media. I think Threads, my Threads account, my personal Threads account is the first social media platform where I have over 1,000 people following me. Um, I think I'm at 2,000. I don't really check, but I think the last time I did check, I was like at 2,000 or close to 2,000. And it has been very eye-opening because to go back to what you said about some content creators being clicky, I've seen that. I saw it on TikTok when I wasn't making content, and now I have to make content on TikTok, and I feel some type of way about it. But
Yeah.
I kind of saw that, and I saw it with people not in my niche. Like these people weren't in my niche at all, although I enjoyed their content.
Mm-hmm.
They met and started hanging out, which I don't have a problem with. I mean, I have met people, content creators on social media, and met them in real life. I've met a couple of people from
Mm-hmm.
social media in real life, but also have to wonder, once you get to a certain point, do you feel, because this is how I feel. I don't want to be an influencer, but I think I am. And we're gonna talk about influencing. I don't think of myself as an influencer and a content creator, but I am on Threads. I am a content creator and I am an influencer. And I think the reason why I don't want to necessarily be an influencer, so to speak, is because of the connotation that comes with that, the
Yeah.
connotation society has placed on it. When Instagram first started, and you had all these people curating this life, this very lavish life. They got on private jets. They had these beautiful houses. They were sitting on top of these cars and they curated this life. But in real life, that wasn't the life they were leading.
Right.
That private jet never left the runway. That car they sat on wasn't even theirs. That the house with the penthouse with the beautiful views was an Airbnb. And because we found that out later, and because society, I also feel, is kind of shifting from the let's have all the things and let's do all the designer things to let's I just want to live and survive and be able to live and survive. We're kind of moving away from everyone wanting to have luxury things, I think. Or
Yeah.
maybe that's just me. I'm moving away from that.
I think it's kind of even across the board. To be honest with you, I think there are people who, they buy into the idea of these luxury items. It's this idea of like your value is based off you consume. Of course, being a creator under the guise of capitalism, and living in especially the United States, I think that's a major thing. It's kind of hard to not be indoctrinated into that idea that like, the success has to come, that these things should come with the success, so to speak.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's the thing about like my journey, is like when I started creating content on TikTok, it was by accident. I didn't actually join TikTok to even make content. I was a spectator until I made a video responding to some white woman and it went viral. I woke up and next thing I know, I had like over 2,000 followers, and I'm like, what the heck is
Mm.
happening? And and then all of a sudden it's like I'm doing what I wasn't trying to do. Like I was doing anti-racism workshops, like I was conducting them and holding them and on panel discussions and things like that. But I never wanted to really be a content creator. And on top of that, I didn't want to. For me, it was a personal thing because I really didn't want to feel like I was peddling my beliefs to make money. Like
Mm.
none of my pages are
Hmm.
monetized, and somebody accused me of that. And I was like, I'm not monetized at all. I'm like, I don't monetize now because so many white people started asking me questions and stuff like that. I put my Cash App in my Venmo in my bio because it's like, y'all white people got to pay me. Like this ain't just, I'm not just giving this out for free to y'all. I'm like, at some point, I'm not saying I'm not demanding it, but if you feel compelled to hit my hand, I'm not gonna say no.
Right.
Um, I didn't make it a prerequisite for watching my content or anything, but all these other content creators who are a lot of them in the same social justice realm that I'm in. A lot of them are getting paid for their content. They're getting brand deals and brand stuff and all type of things. I'm not. And it's me. I'm like, for me, it's about the message. Whether I have 20 people who like a video or I have 60,000 people who like the video. It's like, did you get the message I was trying to get to you? Because if you didn't get that, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
My whole thing with even doing any content creation on TikTok. Now it's only recently that I've tried to kind of move away from that so much and started promoting like the actual creative side of me, the music and everything, because that's what I wanted to make a living doing. Like, I love to create music. I love to compose. I also love to write. So those are the things that I felt like I wanted to, but it's hard now because it's like, I think the struggle with pivoting in the position that I'm in is that so many people are so used to me going off about white people or going off about men.
Mm-hmm.
Off about, that when I say, hey, I got a new track I just released, that doesn't get as much attention as me people.
Because and I feel that because I don't necessarily want to get pigeonholed into creating a certain type of content. I usually say things on threads based on what's on my timeline or based on what I read or what I saw or whatever. And I seem to get a lot of engagement if I'm telling white people off. And it's almost like, and I don't think that I think this is the algorithm and I think it's social media.
Right. I would agree.
It's social media likes the people that run it. They like engagement bait. Whether you intentionally engage bait or not, they like it. When I do threads sometimes about, I remember I did a thread telling off I think her name's Michaela something. She was a gymnast.
Yeah.
She was a U.S. gymnast for U.S. in Tokyo. And she had said something backhanded about the U.S. Olympic team, the 2024 team. And I wrote something to her and it was like in letter form. And that thing got, I think I stopped counting and stopped getting notifications for it once it hit like 4K likes. It wasn't a happy, inspirational engagement. I was telling this person off and going, you really have some nerve talking about people like this when no one really knows who you are. And now that you're getting backlash, you want people that you sat there and talked about with your whole chest to help you.
Right.
And that got like 4K likes. When I'm, trying to do something positive, it gets less views. And that is because the people who run it, that's kind of what they want. You have people that intentionally engage bait. And then you have people that it's not engagement bait, but it is engagement bait.
Yeah.
And it's hard when you just kind of want to pivot to other things. Now, my personal Threads account has more people on it than the podcast Threads account, and that's only because I'm on my personal Threads account more. And I say whatever I want, whatever comes to mind, and I stand on it. I don't think you can go throughout my threads and find something crazy or a gotcha, because I would be like, yeah, I said it. I also think that social media is also intentionally baiting the people they pay and the people they don't pay into, being upset with each other. I'm not monetized either. And one of the reasons I'm not monetized, because I believe to be monetized on threads, you have to have eligibility requirements on Instagram, which I think is ludicrous. My personal Instagram is private, and it's private for a reason because it's private. Right. I probably will never get, unless they do away with how they want to monetize threads, I'll probably never get monetized on threads. even though I'm probably the perfect person to get monetized on Threads, I probably won't. And the content that they're paying for is really, it's not informative, really. It's not engaging. It's just people intentionally rage baiting so they can get the money, which I also find a little disheartening when you have real creatives that are trying to get a foothold in social media. And now you can't really do anything non-creative. You can't do really anything without social media. You can't run for office. You can't market anything. It's almost like you need social media to do it. And I follow in mutuals with a lot of creators, a lot of fellow podcasters, a lot of writers who are wonderful writers, really good writers, but because they're doing it themselves, kind of like what I'm doing with this podcast. They don't really know anybody that can help. They don't have the connections.
Right.
They are really, I would say, grinding. And I could probably grind too. I haven't been grinding. I'm just going to put it out there. I've been very sometimey with my podcast, and I realized I can't do that anymore. But there are people, they don't have the connections and they don't have it to do. And one of the things that I want to do as an influencer, I don't want to be an influencer just for me. I kind of want to be the influencer so I can open the door for other people. Hey, you have something to say, and I think it's really important. Your work is really good. Other people should see it. I want to be that person. I don't want to be the person that just hangs out with other people in my field. I don't want to be the type of person that makes a lot of money. Do I want to make money from this? Yes, because I want this to be my job and I need to live. Unfortunately, we need money for things.
Yeah, unfortunately.
I can't get anything on my good looks alone. So we need money. And
That's debatable. That's debatable.
that's debatable. That's
That's
true.
debatable. You might.
Uh,
Uh,
uh, I haven't I haven't really tried to do that, but you're right. And it's like we live in a society that really, I feel like, doesn't want us to create. We live in a society that isn't very conducive to the creative process. I feel like at one point we were, and now we're not. Like, so my brother and I went to the movies. We went to see Wolverine, Deadpool and Wolverine,
hey.
and I really did enjoy it. And one of the previews was about the Bob Dylan biopic,
Mm-hmm.
and which I didn't know they were doing. And they're doing a Bob Dylan biopic, and there are scenes of him walking through New York, like in the season. And I'm just like, I feel like, and I could be wrong because I'm not from that time period, so I could be wrong. But I feel like certain periods and certain places was better for the creative experience and the creative process that we just don't have anymore.
Right.
Like I feel like I could have been a creative in the 60s and got some flop house apartment that didn't pay a lot, that wasn't that expensive, and kind of been okay and worked my way up. I feel like you kind of can't do that anymore.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
you can't really do that anymore. You could go to some dive bar and do whatever you needed to do. You could play your song, you could sing your poem. There were places that specifically for that. And I feel like we don't have those spaces anymore. We don't have those spaces anymore. And even if we do have those spaces, they tend to want to be catered to established people because they know that's going to make the money.
Right. And that's going
It's
to draw the crowd.
and that's going to bring the crowd. It's always about bringing the crowd and making the money. And it's not, and I think we've kind of fallen away from what the substance of the creative. What are
Mm-hmm.
they creating? What are they writing? What are they saying? If it's not going to be something that people are going to want to pay money for, and if it's not quote unquote commercial, And if it's not quote unquote polished, people don't want it. My podcast isn't polished. There is a watermark from podcast software I use on every single podcast because I don't have money to upgrade it. It's not very polished. The sound sucks. We got an editor now, y'all, so the sound ain't gonna be sucking no more. But the sound sucks and all of this. And I'm just like, but the message is there. And every person that has heard my podcast has said the same thing. I like your podcast because I like the message. I like what you talk about. And you're a really good interviewer, which thanks. Don't know how that happened, but um, that's great. But because it's not polished, because it's grainy, because the audio is bad, because of a whole plethora of things, it doesn't get pushed, it doesn't get seen. And I'm also responsible for pushing it, but it just doesn't get the traction. Now, I could have Rachel Maddow behind me. None of these things would be a problem.
Right.
And would the message be as good?
And that's a good question. I mean, because a lot of times what ends up happening is that once people get on, or once people start to gain acclaim and notoriety, other concerns peep in, and the same energy that's been put into just getting out there now, the energy tends to die down, or it's not as passionate. Like they lose the passion for it, which is always, and you notice it too, because the quality tends to change and shit. And I think, a lot of it is like, people start going into other lanes, or people start doing other things. So they get wrapped up in that, and they forget about the main thing that got them there. So they don't put the energy, or isn't as put into it as much as it was when they were first trying to get on in the first place.
Or I feel like the message has been commodified.
Yes.
So it's not, the message is there, but it's very light and it's very on the fence, and it's very, I don't want to offend anybody. I don't personally go out to offend anyone unless you offend me first. Like if you're a troll, I'm just going, my whole goal is to offend you. I had a troll this morning and I'm like, yeah, my whole goal is to offend you because you're going around offending other people. But when I do my own content, my goal is not to offend anyone. My goal is to speak truth.
Right.
Truths aren't happy all the time. They're not rainbows and unicorns. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes she is talking about me because that's something I do. Sometimes you get hurt. I've gotten hurt. I've seen people say things and I've been like, oh, damn, she's talking. I do that. She's talking about me. And yes, my first instinct really is defensiveness and why would you say that and blah, blah. But through the magical world of therapy, I've learned, okay, I need to take a step back. Why did that bother you so much?
Mm-hmm.
And is it what's bothering me? Is it something I want to change? Is it something I want to do better? Is it something I want to get rid of? Or am I just upset that I do this and the person called me out on it? Right. And the thing, it's calling you out without calling you out. And the only way we know that it called you out is when you respond to it. And you responding to it, it's not me being offensive. It's you having a response, oh, what Kia said bothered me. Because maybe that's something that I do, or my husband, or my kids, or my grandma, or my mother, or my friends, and want to stand up for them. I want to defend them and defend myself. You don't have to defend anybody.
Yeah. And you mentioned a really good thing. It's just like when people respond to certain things that are said, I always think about like when, talking about, when I talk about racism or anything like that, especially like when, white people will get upset and they'll try to mention something. It's like, well, you're not saying anything about this. You're not saying anything about that. I'm like, well, that's because like, this is what I'm choosing to talk about. You're trying to derail the subject matter, and that's not what this is. Like, you just really have an issue with it. That's not my burden to bear. I'm not going to let you place that at my doorstep either.
Right.
My goal is to have this conversation because it's a conversation needs to have. If I talk about men and unhealthy masculinity and why it's so hurtful and why it hurts us, not just the people that we hurt, but it's also, it comes back and it hurts us too. And the first thing men want to say is like, oh, you're being a simp, oh, you're being this. Oh, is it that? Am I being a simp, or is it that what I said just viscerally got to you so much that now you're mentally short circuiting and your only immediate response is to be aggressive and defensive about it because you don't actually want to deal with the real work, the underlining work that lays in between your defensiveness and getting to the space that you need to be at. You know, I tell people all the time, like I see women, I see so many times where women be like, oh, men are trash, men are this, men are that. I'm like, and I just shrug it off. I'm like, I'm not going to get upset about them saying something because I know it comes from a particular experience. I know
Exactly.
this. I'm aware of that. So why would I get upset about something that from their experience, they have came to this conclusion? And the only thing that I can do is try to be as safe of a space when women are around me.
Exactly.
Like I was just in Vegas and I went to we went to this little club on Friday night and literally I was dancing with these two women. Nothing super major. We just dancing, have a good time. I'm giving them their space. And then these dudes came around like cockroaches, like trying to talk to them. And one of the women, you know, she was a little taller than me. This guy came up to her while we were dancing. We're all dancing, having a good time. I'm talking to the people because I'm not from Vegas. So I'm talking to people and everything while I'm dancing. And one of the guys came up from behind her, tried talking to her. And she was like, oh, I'm with my boyfriend. And she pointed at me. I'm looking like, I barely know you. But but she felt safe enough to say that I didn't make her feel like I was trying to be some type of leech or anything like that. I'm just having a good time. We vibing. After we left, like we all left, we ended up leaving at the same time. As I'm going to the elevator and we're sitting there standing there, her friend was like, you know, you're a really great dancer. I was like, thank you. And she was like, and you were really cool. She was like, everybody else was just a bunch of creeps. And I'm like, well, you know, I'm having a good time. Like I don't have to be all over you to have a good time. It's not that type of like that's not the type of time I'm on. And I think that's what people don't get, men's particular. Like you don't have to do all this extra mess to get the attention that you're trying to get.
Right.
Like the young woman asked for my number after the fact. She thought I was from Vegas. I'm like, no, I'm not even from Vegas. I'm not even from here. I live in Wisconsin. She's like, oh, really? I'm like, I'm just visiting friends. But she felt safe enough to talk to me, safe enough to do that, and I guess attracted enough to ask me for my number without me even trying. And I think that's a conversation that a lot of people have to have. Is like the issue that we see many times is like, how are you showing up in spaces? And when you show up in that space, are you causing panic? Are you causing fear? Are you causing discomfort? You know, and it shows in how people react to you in the space.
Right. Agreed. Because and this is also online spaces too.
Yep.
I tell people all the time, my space is a safe space first and foremost for Black people because I'm Black. Then it's going to be a safe space for all other marginalized groups. So if you're Latino, if you're Asian, if you are LGBTQIA, if you are Jewish, if you are Muslim, you will have the secondary safe space. But just know if any of those other groups start being anti Black, you got to go because this is a safe space for my siblings because we don't have one
Right.
anywhere. This is a safe space for me and my content I think is really kind of around that. But it's also around really fun, silly stuff. Like I frolicked in the field yesterday.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like,
I came back from the movies and I took the dog out for a walk and we both me and the dog are just running and frolicking in the field. So I talked about it. You know, I talk about certain things that happen to me because I think it's important. I've made content about my sexual assaults because I thought that was really important because I feel like people don't really understand what happens to a person after they're sexually assaulted. They don't understand the ways of which our first of all, our brain changes. Our The way we move around the world, navigate the world changes. And
Hmm.
so I think making content like that is really important, but no one really wants to support that type of content. No
And
one.
and that's so sad because these are the conversations that need to be had. These are the conversations, and I feel like these are the things that I feel like a lot of people should be focused on because so many people are affected by them. And like it's always crazy how you find out how many people are affected when something major happened. Like think about like the situation, when we talked about Diddy and how many people were literally having conversations.
Yep.
And it's just like, why do we wait till tragedy strikes to have these conversations? There should be some prevention conversations happening. There should be some conversations that is based in harm reduction, not waiting till harm has been perpetrated and then now everybody wants to talk about it, everybody wants to discuss it. Now all the content creators are in on it and they want to get a part about it because they know that's what's going to give them traction. It's like, to me, that comes off as inauthentic. And it's like, okay, you're only speaking about this now because you know full well everybody and their mom's going to be speaking about it. And
Well,
it's like, that to me sometimes disturbs me a bit because it's like, I get it. Like, it's happening right now. So let's focus on it right now. But what about the stuff that lingers? Because it lingers.
and let's talk about, you brought up a really good point about being authentic in content creating. So maybe about 2 months ago, I think I kind of realized that people listen to me when I say stuff. And yeah, I'm gonna be really honest, it kind of scared me because I'm like, am I an influencer? And I think I had even posed this question. I was like, am I an influencer and can I be an influencer and still have integrity? Does that mean once I'm an influencer or a content creator, and I think I like content creator better than an influencer, can I be a content creator and still have my dignity and my integrity intact? And didn't really get the answers I was looking for, but I sort of did. And I know that for me, yes, I'm going to be a content creator. This is something that's happening. It's currently happening. It's going to continue to happen.
Yeah.
But if I start to get brand deals, am I going to go with every brand deal? No. Am I going to platform everybody? Am I going to I hope that I don't get to the point where I feel like I'm selling part of who I am in order to stay relevant. And I think that's another problem with creating sometimes in content creation is because people get on the internet. Like you said, let's take you for example. You get on the internet, you said something, you made a video, it went viral, you got all these people. Now, for some people, they would continue to go down that route because they go, well, this is what's getting me traction. So I'm going to continue to go down this route. And they do it to get the brand deals and to get the money. And so in some ways you do kind of sell out because, well, I want to be a Mr. Beast and I want to do that. And we're going to talk about people like that and how they're not self-made as you want them to think they are. But say a perfectly self-made has no context and they suddenly, become big. I see a lot of changes sometimes. Like their change in content differs. It's almost like I'm doing this now because I'm getting accolades and I'm getting the money and I'm getting that stuff. And I don't necessarily want to do it for that. I don't want to do it for the accolades. I don't want to do it for the money. I'm not trying to be a multimillionaire doing this. I'm just trying to live comfortably and have retirement. That's it. I kind of see it change. And then we want to put up people like Mr. Beast and all the who I think has a scandal. I can't wait. I think he has a I think it's a couple of stuff involving him directly or whatever. We can say this about big YouTubers, media personalities, news anchors. When I start going behind the scenes of certain news anchors and getting into their like how they got started, it was always their dad knew somebody, their parent was somebody, they got married to somebody. It's always I know somebody.
Yeah.
And you they come across, or it's implied that, oh, I just worked really hard and I got here. And it's like, not to say you didn't, because you did. And not to discount anybody's hard work, because all of this is hard work. It really is hard work.
Yeah.
Creating an audience is hard work. I'm creating an audience from scratch. And like I said, I only have 2,000 people following me on Threads. Not that I am mad about it. I'm actually like, wow, 2,000 people. That to me, that's a lot of people.
Exactly.
To everyone else, that's like, oh my God, you just have 2,000 people. And I'm like, okay, but I had to start from zero. I didn't buy no people. I didn't buy followers or nothing.
Oh
I
my
went from
God.
0 people to 2,000. I think within the manner of a year, which I think is not bad,
It's not
growth
that.
wise.
No, it's not.
And it's like, I wish people were a little bit honest about how they got started, because one, I think there are a lot of people that have things that they want to say and voices that we should hear, but you start. So for instance, you start a podcast and a lot of people just expect instant right off
Right.
the bat. I never expected that when I did this podcast. I did this podcast because really I was bored and I wanted to start something to where in 3, 4 years, maybe this will be sustainable, where I don't have to work for somebody because of my mental health issues, my neurodivergency. I can help myself and be self-sufficient.
Right.
I did not expect for this to pop off in 5, 6 months. I don't expect it to pop off in the next 5 or 6 months. I don't really expect it to pop off within the next year. I started it and I knew, okay, this is going to take a while. You have people that start things and think it's going to be just like that, because you have all these other content people kind of doing that too. Being creative takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of time, especially if you're doing it from scratch.
Right. And I think
When
that's
you
I'm gonna say I think that's
no,
gonna say that's a good thing that you mentioned that people expected. People look at stuff like that Hawk Talk girl and how she said that one little line and now she has a book deal, she has this and that or whatever. But a lot of people didn't already forgot about her.
I forgot about her.
Like a lot of people already forgot about her. A lot of people already and there are those like overnight sensations that become like the flavor of the week or something like that. Especially I think a lot of it I contributed to people's short attention span too. How
Yes,
quickly people are on something, then they're just done. Like it's like okay,
right.
whatever. Like they'll make a status like, can we be over this by today, please? Thank you very much, and then keep it moving. So I think you're right. Like for longevity, you have to build an audience, people who are willing to come on the journey with you. But it's a journey. Like, you doing your podcast, this is a journey that you're on. Me choosing
Yes,
to release music is a journey that I'm on. And you have to build an audience so much to a point that they are willing to go on the journey with you. It's not just an overnight sensation or overnight trend. You want people who are going to be with you for the long haul. That takes work. Like I don't expect, like when I released my first single, I didn't expect it to go crazy overnight or anything like that. I know that it's going to take time. It's going to take some solid work, also some learning, because I'm doing everything on my own. I'm working on
same,
my
same.
short film for my song Dear Jane. I'm doing all of that myself. The filming, all of that, the effects, I'm doing it. Me. Like I'm using my iPhone and my iPad. Like the graphic stuff that I made for my stuff, I did that. I'm doing it on my iPhone and my iPad. I'm using whatever resource I got and part of it too is just like, I don't want nobody telling me how to do my shit. Like it needs to be like this. No, because that's not what I'm envisioning. No, I'm not. I don't want nobody tainting my vision or removing my vision. And and because of that, it's a longer road because you don't want nobody homogenizing or diluting what you are trying to build because you want it to be a reflection of who you are. You want
Right.
the podcast to be a reflection
Of me, right. I'm Kia. I'm
of
neurodivergent. I go off on tangents. I there are three roads in the middle of the forest. I'm going to try to go down all three of them. Go down here a little bit, come back, then go to this one a little bit, come back, go down this one a little bit. Maybe this one's a good road, so I'm going to just continue to go. I go off on tangents. I go off on rants. I forget what I'm saying sometimes. Like, that's a reflection of who I am, and that's what I want the podcast to be. And I am doing all of, well, we have an editor. Like, did I say that, y'all?
yes,
We
yes.
got an editor now. I was the editor, producer. I'm the booking agent. I am the social media marketing person. And FYI, I really suck at the social media part, and I kind of suck at the booking agent part, but I can talk a lot, so I'm good at that. Like, okay, I'm the host, but all this other stuff goes into it. So I'm doing it by myself and I'm learning how to do it as well because I don't know nothing about editing nothing. I shouldn't put that in there, take it out and do whatever. But I'm doing all of this myself. You have writers that are doing all of this themselves, and writers that I really kind of want to showcase on the podcast. So shout out to the soloist who has an amazing book called Seven the Awakening, which is really, really good.
Yeah,
Olive Win
I gotta buy that book. I was talking to her about it, and she gave me the premise, and like me and her kind
it's
of
it's actually a really good premise.
yeah, and
Um,
she's awesome. She's funny as hell too.
Olive Winter Wright has something coming out. She has a story coming out in September. She has a whole book coming out in next year in 2025. And she has the most adorable, like she has a newsletter. I love her newsletter. Um, there's another writer, Elle Ramirez. She has a book coming out. She already has a book previous, but she has a new book coming out. She has a newsletter that's really great. Like, you have all of these people who are for like these soloists. It's her.
Right,
She doesn't have an agent. She doesn't have a book deal. She doesn't have anybody. It's her.
right.
It's just her by herself doing it. And so because she's her by herself doing it, does that mean that her voice doesn't get a chance because she doesn't have someone backing her behind her? No, it
No,
doesn't mean that. Does it mean she deserves to have the limelight? Absolutely, because she's a good writer, and I think she has the talent to really be an established name in the writing community. But she's doing it by herself. She may not have the connections. I don't have any connections. Like, and the connections I do have, they're very like woo woo. I don't have connections either. I'm doing this by myself. There's no one backing me. Does that mean that I don't get to say or I don't get a voice? No, it doesn't mean that. It just means you keep going. There's a couple of producers that I know through my brother that, you know, they're just going because what else am I going to do? Sometimes you create, and I think the soloist said this one time, I create for myself. I'm
hmm
not creating for anybody else. I'm doing it for me.
right.
And I think that is true for my podcast in a lot of ways. Doing my podcast for me so I can say I can do it and I did it. I want it to take off and I want it to be successful because, again, do y'all want me to sing I Need a Dollar again? Because I'll do it. I need $1. I need five. But, that's why, but do I want to be I just want enough money to, okay, I have retirement. I have a savings account. I can travel a little bit. I can help some other people out. That's why I'm doing this. I am not doing it to get famous, but knowing that I could because of what I'm doing.
I'm just trying to feed my vinyl addiction.
See? And it's one of those things where being a creative person does mean that you can get famous. I think you can get famous. I don't know if all creatives want to get famous, but I do think that all creatives know that there's a possibility you could get famous. Like, I don't necessarily want to be famous, but I know that there's a possibility I could be.
Right, exactly.
And some people do. Well, some people are like, well, I do want to be famous. Okay, that's cool. Look, I'm not one to yuck your yum. If that's what you want to do, that's cool. I just want to live and not be broke and not be starved. That's it. And I want to help people too.
Yeah, like I feel like the fame thing, me, I can deal without. I've seen what it's done to my idols. My idols ain't here no more. Fame killed them, and I'll argue that all day.
So do you think that, so that's really important. And this is something I also thought about too with being a creative. Can you be rooted enough in reality and still be famous?
I
And the
think
reason you think you can? And the reason I say that is because I feel like a lot of people, a lot of famous people that I like, may have started out being really rooted and they got famous and they still were kind of rooted. But the bigger they got, the more unrooted they got, if that makes sense.
yeah,
And so I tend to think, were you always this unrooted? Did you become famous to get a sense of, did you become famous to kind of get a sense of, I want people to love me. I want people to like me because if they love me and like me, then I can love and like myself. Or were you always kind of rooted and you said, okay, I'm doing this because I want to do it and I happen to be famous. I think if I had done this earlier in my life, it would have been, I'm doing this because I want to be famous and I want people to love me and like me because I can love and like myself. And now I'm doing this because I think I'm really good at it and I like doing it. And
mhm.
I just want to make a livable wage out of it. And a livable wage is not 50, 60, $70,000, y'all. It's not. Everyone,
It used to
it
be when
used,
our parents were coming up. It was
but it
now.
used to be, but it's not. And so, and I say that to go, I could be okay with 250 a year, 50K a year.
Dang.
And I wouldn't really want or need to make more money than that.
Listen,
And that's a low bar. And to me, that's a low bar.
I don't get that. Look, that's like hitting the lottery for me right now because like I ain't even gonna hold you. But I mean, the reality is just like I feel like in the essence of things when you're talking about these stuff, it's like people feel like you have to be a starving artist in order to really be true to the craft, and it's like that's not the case.
Right.
I think there is a way to manage and balance out wanting to be true to who you are and also wanting to be able to be comfortable while you do it. Like there's nothing wrong with that. Nobody should be without a livable wage. Nobody should be scavenging and scraping for scraps.
Nobody
Nobody
should be
is
homeless
that.
and have a job.
Yeah.
No one
And
should
like,
be
yeah,
homeless and have a job. No one should be living in their car and have a job. You shouldn't say, I'm a painter, I'm a writer, I'm a so and so, but because I don't have the connections or I don't know anybody or people aren't buying it, that I have to suffer. We live in a country where no one should have to suffer, but we live in a society that goes, yes, some people have to suffer, and if you're suffering, it's your fault.
right. Which it just and honestly, it doesn't make sense considering how the society is structured. Because when you look at the structure of the society, it's maintained so that only a certain percentage can be successful, and everybody else is either scraping for scraps or they're looking for scraps.
It's like, and too, when creatives can't make the money to create, a lot of creatives stop doing it
Mm-hmm.
because I can't make the money to create. And creating takes time.
Yes, A lot
And
of men.
you have people, y'all, it takes time. I spent all day yesterday working on podcast things like it was my full time job.
Yep.
I'm getting paid $0 for it. I had to have meetings. I had two meetings. One was kind of like an interview. I had to schedule things. I had to do this and that. Then, okay, well, what topics am I going to talk about, and who am I going to talk about these topics with? And okay, who do I want as a guest? Let me get these people. It's a full-time job, and because of my neurodivergency, and because it takes a lot of mental energy for me to just live. I may not be able to do this and have a full-time job, and part-time jobs don't pay enough for you to do anything.
Yeah.
So we missed out on a lot of creativity and a lot of wonderful things because people just don't have the mental time, the physical time to do it because I can't get paid to do this, so I have to go out and get a job. I'm looking for work right now. I'm looking for jobs. I'm going to get off this podcast and look for a job.
Same.
But you know what I mean? And it's like you have people who are creating and working. And if you create and work, when do you have time for yourself? I think one of the reasons why we keep having all these dumb fucking movies in Hollywood and dumb fucking TV shows is because not the real, but the creativity for people who could give us something new and fresh, no one wants to listen to because even the people gatekeeping the creativity, the CEOs and heads of news organizations and film studios and all of that, they're still looking at it from a capitalistic standpoint. Oh, that's going to be too crazy. No one's going to want to see that. Well, let's give them another Beetlejuice, though. Or let's give them another Marvel movie. Or let's give them this. And it's like, how many reboots of old TV shows are we going to watch? How many reboots of old movies are we going to watch? Like, the creativity is stagnant because we have all of these people. You want to put the capitalistic structure to the creativity. And capitalism and creativity does not breed creativity. Capitalism and innovation does not breed innovation
No.
because capitalism is always going to win out in the end, and the innovation and the creativity is going to die out.
Yeah. Because it's always about the cash grab.
It's always about the cash grab.
It's always about
always.
And the cash grab sometimes means more than telling a good, structured new story or introducing us to a new perspective. And I think that is what a lot of creators are seeing, and it's what's stifling a lot of creators because it's just like a lot of them are probably like, I have a great story to tell. If somebody just give me the opportunity and hear me out and just listen, and I think the more that the public starts pushing for those things and actually just even maybe diverting or divesting from the old ways of absorbing content or absorbing movies, absorbing music, the better things might be, because it's just like you're teaching people how to absorb these things and then they're following suit. How we listen to music now is not how we listened to music like 20 years ago.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You are absolutely right. The way that we do things is we went from vinyl to cassette. No, 8-track. See how old I am, y'all? My aunt used to have an 8-track of Teddy Pendergrass. She loved that 8-track. And that 8-track only played one song right. And the rest of the 8-track, you could hear what was on the other side of the 8-track while you was listening to one side. Like, that's how messed up 8-track was, y'all. But yes, I'm looking for something because this also delves into news media. So when we get back to talking about the Democratic Convention and how a lot of people were very upset that content creators were there, I was actually really happy because one of my goals for myself is to be at the 2028 Democratic Convention as a content creator. And there were people that were really upset because, well, you know, no one's really listening to the established news. They were in the way. And it was established news that had a problem with the content creators. I don't think anyone else had a problem with the content creators. And I'm like, okay, but why are you having a problem with content creators? Because, they are how we get our news now.
Right.
They are becoming the establishment. They are how we get our news because we're tired of the news organizations doing this whole lopsided thing. You've seen it with New York Times. New York Times is mad that Biden paid no attention to them. And so the owner of the New York Times decided, let's go bash Biden and let's talk favorably about Trump. First of all, news organizations have kind of been doing this for a very long time. If you go back and see how they talked about Black people versus how they talked about white people, they've been doing it for a while. Once we got this new medium and people are like, oh, I can buy a microphone and I can deliver the news and I can just deliver the news. Okay. And I feel like the news organizations, and because I really want to focus on news organizations because I see it now with them with this than I do with movies. So with news organizations, I kind of feel like they're acting like record corporations did when Napster came out. Like, yep. Oh, it's not a big deal and they're not going to do anything and it's not going to upend us. But it did. And now everybody streams music. Vinyl's making a comeback. People are now buying more records than anything, but people now mostly stream their music.
Yep.
Now you have the news organizations, and let me tell you, I'm an MSNBC junkie. I used to watch MSNBC for the past 3 years. I was watching it all day, every day. And in the past 3 weeks, I stopped. Now you have the same thing with news organizations. You have Under the Desk News now. You have Chasing Oz. You have McLaughlin. You have all these people. Johnny, I'm going to pronounce his last name wrong. Johnny, I'm so sorry. Taladusa. You have all these people. Sorry, Beth. You have all of these people now who are coming up in the ranks of political punditry, and they're doing it by themselves. And they're now getting, I feel like, the platform where people are listening to them before they turn on MSNBC. People are listening to them before they turn on CNN. And news organizations are in their cash grab too. I'm only going to put stories out there and I'm only going to promote certain people and certain pundits and certain analysts because these are what the people want to see. And I know I'm going to make money from it. But now you have a lot of people turning the news off. Like, there was a whole thing on Threads of people, I'm boycotting MSNBC. First, they boycotted MSNBC because of Ronna McDaniel. And then they boycotted it for something else. And I'm like, first of all, people, all of these people know each other. The news industry is a very small kind of window. They all know each other.
Right.
And the news industry and the government all know each other too. How do you think Jen Psaki went from being the press secretary to having her show on MSNBC?
Connections.
The NBC and Fox News offices, bureau offices in DC are within walking distance to the Capitol. I know. I used to live by it. I could walk from my apartment to NBC News and Fox News, and not only that, they're in the same building, right beside each other. There's a building over here that says NBC News. In the same building on the other side, Fox News over here. And if you walk outside that building, you're looking at the Capitol. They're all in cahoots together. How do you think Ronna McDaniel was even able to get something on MSNBC of all things? And then you have to look at, well, who owns these media organizations? Really rich people that want to continue to stay rich. So if I'm a really rich person, I want to continue to stay rich. Well, which politician am I going to try to push? Whether I do it overtly or subtly.
Right. and they put all these like businesses under one major conglomerate too.
And they put all the business under one major conglomerate. MSNBC is owned by Comcast. When did the cable company start being owned by the news? Because MSNBC is owned by NBC News, that's owned by NBC Universal, a Comcast company.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Like, it's crazy when you think about it, because it's like, and I just took a class for school about like TV and stuff like that, and the ways in which a lot of these major businesses now became under one umbrella, because certain companies, media titans, were buying these companies, putting them under an umbrella, and they all now just trickle down and rinse off each other. I mean, perfect example is just like how if you talk about Disney owns Hulu, that also owns ABC, that also owns ESPN, that also owns, like, I mean, they have, it's just a whole giant like tree of different businesses and conglomerates and media pieces together, all under one umbrella. And it controls and manipulates everything. And it's just like, when you realize that, it's just like, hey, like
and then they tend to prop up even new media that comes out. You have Semaphore, you have Puck News, you have some other people. They're all owned by white people, white men who know somebody at these news organizations. You know what I mean? So it's like they have the backing, they have the capital, and they have this other stuff. Well, Chasing Oz kind of did it by herself, and she has she had a really big platform on TikTok. Like, that's where I found her. I found her on TikTok, and she follows me on Threads, and I'm like, oh wow, thanks. But you have all of these people, or you'll have people that people loved at a certain point, and then the person said something that they didn't like, and now it's like, I don't love them no more.
Yeah. And
you saw that. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think that is a major thing that we're seeing, especially a lot more nowadays. It's like we're seeing people make a remark, say something, and people are just like, oh, it's like that. And it's this idea that, and I was just having this conversation, that fame, money, access tends to make a person more of what they already were. It almost inflates it. And and some people try to hide those pieces or those parts of them, but eventually it ends up being exposed. And once it's exposed, it's kind of hard to go back. Like, and I think that's the double-edged sword of this idea of what it means to be successful. What it means to garner success is that, like you said, if you're not already rooted when you first started, and I mean really grounded, aspects and pieces of your personality, will get exposed, and you wind up putting yourself in uncompromising positions just to stay relevant, just to say this, or just to, for the sake of anything else, just to keep the cash cow coming. And a lot of times you end up compromising yourself.
And I really think that the consumers of content, the consumers of people who create content, I think because I also consume content. I may be a content creator, but I consume other people's content too. I think we're getting to a point where we are looking for more authenticity, more realness, more groundedness with the people we get our news from the people we get our music from, our literature, everything. I think we just want the realness that the oversaturation of social media kind of strips. Whole having the perfect image, having a curated thing. I think we're tired of seeing that. I can't, how many more Chanel bags can you show me? I don't care. How many more trips in private jets? I don't care. Show me something else. And so I want to be that content creator that is authentic. Am I going to go on trips? Yes, I am. I may even buy myself a Chanel bag or two because I like luxury things. Do I have to live in a luxury lifestyle of the high end stuff? No. But, I like nice things.
Yeah.
But am I going to sacrifice my integrity and my values and my morals for the Chanel bag? No, because I do not need the Chanel bag to make me feel good as a person. I already feel good about myself as a person. I don't need the penthouse view to make myself feel good as a person. I don't need all these people saying, "Oh my God, Kia, I love you," to make myself feel good as a person. I already feel good as a person because that's who I am. I have people that love me unconditionally because I do. And so if I ever get to the point where I feel like I'm about to compromise, I'm just not going to do it. If that means I don't make money anymore, fine. Hopefully, I will do well with the money I did make. So, okay, well, I don't really need to make it anymore. I'm good. I understand that I have a certain shelf life, and I understand that I may not be relevant. I mean, look at Madonna. She's not really relevant anymore. Is she an icon? Absolutely. I love Madonna. I do. I love Madonna. But ain't nobody looking for Madonna right now.
Nah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Ain't nobody looking for Madonna. Are there people that people would always be looking for? Yes. Are there people who bounce back? Yes. I remember when everybody wasn't looking for Prince and then Prince came back. So, there are highs and lows and ebbs and flows to everything. Sometimes your time is over. You have to pass the torch. Biden said, "Okay, I think it's done. Let me give it to Kamala because I can't."
Yeah. And that was like the smartest decision he's made, probably this year. If I'm being honest. Hey, look, I gotta
No,
see it. It's probably the smartest decision he's made all year.
wait. Oh yeah, because he forgave my student loans last year, so that was the smartest thing he did last year. This year, yeah.
Smartest
And
decision.
so you have to realize that sometimes your time is up.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, and even with that, just knowing that, like, if you're creating something that you're looking to create something that's going to last a long time, but even with that, just creating for the sake of, just like you said, creating for yourself, because at some point you might not be able to make money off of that anymore. But if you still have a passion to create, it gives you some sense of peace. For me, creating is therapy. When I write, it's therapy. When I compose music, it's therapy. A lot of it is me getting out the gunk and the bile that I feel like I've extracted from this society my entire life. And whether it's things that I'm dealing with personally or whether it's things that I've seen, it's always going to be a reflection of that. And that's never going to change, even if I become a success and then I fall off. Like, I'm still going to create because it's for me. It's still part of my story. I think people just have to, I always tell people, like we was talking about, when I was having this conversation, finding your why and able to attest and be in tune with that. You have to find your why. Why do you do this? Why is it important to you?
Right.
Why does it have to be successful for you? Like,
Right.
Find your why. Once you do that part and you root yourself in that, and you don't lose that, that's the key part. If you don't lose your why, and your why might alter a little bit as you grow and as you get more success, but the core of your why should still remain the same. That keeps you rooted into why you got into this in the first place.
Yeah.
And
I think my why was to help people. If I tell a story and tell you, well, I'm on the autism spectrum, I have ADHD, and I'm Black, and you're listening to this, and you're Black, and you could be younger than me. I'm almost 48. I'll be 48 in November. And you're younger than me, and you go, oh, and you may be on the autism spectrum, and you may have ADHD, and you'll go, oh, this person's older than me and she has it. It makes you feel less alone.
Mm-hmm.
If I talk about my sexual assaults and I talk about, well, this is my day to day and this is what I have to deal with. I have night terrors. I have flashbacks. I disassociate. I do this. then that other person that could be sitting somewhere and ain't told nobody nothing about being assaulted, that's going through that, someone else is going through that. I don't feel alone anymore. I know what it's like to feel like no one else understands what I'm going through. It's a very horrible feeling to have. It's just, it's isolating
Yeah.
and it makes you angry. It makes you resentful. It's hurtful. It's a very hurtful feeling.
You feel
And
silent.
so you feel siloed. And so, okay, I don't want anyone to feel that like that. So if I tell my story and you don't feel, well, she went through it. I've done something, even if it's one person.
Yeah.
Then I did what I set out to do.
Yeah. I talk about my
I,
mental health all the time. I talk about
I
my
talk,
I talk about my
hmm
suicide attempt all the time, and people, that's the part of my story my life that I feel like it's something that's happening a lot, but nobody's talking about it, especially if you're black.
right.
And it's like when I tell that story or when I talk about that, a lot of times people will come out the woodwork and say, "Dude, I didn't even know. Like I went through the same thing," or like, "Dang, I didn't even know somebody else went through this the way I did."
Right.
And then you get people who are like telling you, yo, I appreciate your vulnerability because I've been trying to deal with this for the longest time and feel like I didn't have anybody that I could talk to about it, or I feel like I was crazy for going through this, or that something was wrong with me for going through this. And
Right.
a lot of times you don't know who you are influencing and
hmm
who your content is really affecting in a way that can be long lasting and beneficial, not just for yourself for getting that out,
Other people.
but for
Yeah.
other people who are trying to find some sense of, you know, peace, harmony. Like, I think that's the main focus. Um, I think about, even though I really don't fuck with him now, but there's a song by Talib Kweli on his Beautiful Struggle album, and he says this and I say it to myself all the time to kind of remind me why I'm doing the things I'm doing. But he, at the end of a verse, he says, "The label wants a song about a bubbly life. I have trouble trying to write some shit to bang in the club in the night while people suffer tonight. But Lord knows I try."
Hello.
And that to me always centers, anything that I do, because it's like there's no way I can sit there and be an influence about a lavish ass house when there's kids and families getting bombed in fucking Gaza. There's sexual, violence happening in Sudan. There's exploitation in Congo. There's all these different things going on, and I'm sitting there flaunting in a private jet that's not even mine to feed you a lifestyle that I don't even live. When at the end of the day,
And that,
I'm closer to those people that's being
right.
bombed than the actual person that
And
owns the jet. Like, what are
and
we
to
doing?
be quite frank, you're selling a lifestyle that a lot of people can't even
Afford,
obtain.
right?
They even if they worked 24/7, they still wouldn't be able to obtain that lifestyle. And I think that that's where the shift is happening, because it's
Yeah,
like, well, I can't do this, so why am I even going to continue to look at it or listen to you or whatever, because you're not living my life. My life is I'm not making enough to live. My life is I'm doing 50 other things and I can't even take time for myself. I don't have the money to fly anywhere. I've probably never left my block for this reason. I just don't have it to do. And
exactly.
so why am I going to sit there and listen to you? I'm not. I'm going to listen to someone else that maybe I can resonate with. So
Mhm.
we're over time. It's an hour and 27 minutes.
Sorry, y'all.
We talk a lot, but since this was for creatives, what I'm going to do, we're going to take the last couple minutes. I'm going to have a shout out to some creatives, and these are people that I know on Threads, and I want you to go follow them because they have wonderful things to create. We talked about the soloist. She's a writer. We have Trey Talks. Has her own podcast that you should listen to. Olive Winter writes. She has a story coming out in September, and she has a book coming out next year. Else, I feel like I'm missing people. Do you have anybody that you want to shout out?
Can't think of anything offhand, but I think what I'll do is I'll make a list and post it on Threads. So if you are on Threads and you follow me, Black Yoda, underscore 84. Be on the
And
lookout.
all of these people that I talked about in the podcast, I'm going to put their social media up and their work up. So people who are listening who may not be on social media, you can find their work. You don't have to follow them on social media, but you can find their work somewhere. So that's going to be in the show notes. Geronimo, my new co-host, thank you.
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure. It's always an honor and a privilege. It's just always a great time. I always, get off of these podcasts feeling full. So thank you again. Of course, thank you for allowing me to be one of your co-hosts.
Yes.
This journey as well. And it's just interesting because it's like I tried to stray away from doing a podcast. I just felt like there was too many men with mics. But I'm okay with being a co-host. That means I ain't.
Okay. I was about to say, well, too bad you have one now.
Yeah, I'm okay with being a co-host because that means I ain't got to do all the talking. Like it's too many men with mics. Some of them need their mics taken away.
We can talk about that next week.
Yeah,
we can talk about the men with the mics next week. Thank you, new co-host Sam. This has been another episode of I Got a Lot of Things to Say. I'm your host, Kia. Geronimo's my co-host now. We're going to be back next week with another episode because now I'm going to be doing this weekly, or at least try to anyway. We are also, everybody that I talked about in this week's episode, you will find their social media and their work in the show notes for this one. You can find us on Spotify, YouTube, and Substack. Substack also has a paid subscription component. So if you're feeling like you should support the arts, support this one. Because I have a staff now that needs $1. So support. Like, subscribe, tell all your friends about it, and we will be back. Thanks, guys. Bye.